Hello and welcome to Amazing Women in Business, a podcast where we celebrate the courage and tenacity of women who are not just participating, but profoundly transforming the business landscape. I'm Demi Lin, your host, and navigating the complexities of personal and professional growth across cultures. Each episode, we dive into stories that resonate deeply, featuring trailblazing women who break through barriers and confront challenges with grace and strategy. Whether you are seeking inspiration to take the next career leap or looking for wisdom to balance personal and professional demands, you are in the right place. Together, we explore not just successes, but the resilience required to thrive in today's dynamic business world. Get ready to be inspired, feel connected, and empower your journey with every story we unfold. Hi, Debbie. How are you? Good. Thank you for coming to my Amazing Women in Business podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Maybe just kick off our podcast with a quick and brief introduction of yourself.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Cyronne Counts. I am based outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where I attended college. I went to the Georgia Institute of Technology, aka Georgia Tech, where I earned my bachelor's in chemical engineering. I am currently, well, Demi, you don't even know this, but I really just got a new job, a new role at a mid-sized chemical company called Aurorium, where I will be the market manager for their personal and home care segment. Prior to getting this new role, I worked in the nonprofit sector at Women in Product as a director of programs. And prior to that, I had several roles all centered around industry marketing for chemicals or the paper industry, product management, strategic research for various markets. I spent most of my career working for Accenture as a consultant. But then I spent also time working for manufacturing companies. So I worked for 2 paper companies and a chemical company. So my career has been a mixture of working in technical fields as an engineer, as well as doing business research and market management, mostly centered around all kinds of manufacturing industries, paper and chemical industries.
Yes. Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. I literally just found out on Monday.
I just think about the different company you've been working on. It's a little bit different from consultant, chemical companies, and then NGO. These are quite different. Can you share a little bit about your career switch? Like what's inspiration behind that?
Yeah. So I think I had, for every career change that I've made throughout my life, I've had what I think is a good reason for making the switch. My very first job was an engineering job. I was fresh out of school. I was eager to apply all of the things that I learned in college in a very real setting, right? So I worked for a paper company as a process engineer. I was able to gain some really good skills. I was able to have my first experience managing people. But what I discovered is that the job itself didn't fulfill me because I wasn't able to see my impact, right? So that was a learning for me, in that in order for me to be fulfilled in my career, I had to be able to see what kind of impact I was making. I also learned in that job that I like talking to customers. And for me, it was a way to see how my work was impacting somebody else's lives. It kind of all kept coming back to the impact piece for me. So, not that I didn't like being an engineer, I felt like I was just in a box, and I felt like I wasn't able to see the impact of my work as much as I wanted to. So that made me move into more of market facing, customer facing type role. And that's brought me to the consulting firm, very customer facing, still able to use problem solving skills and the skills that I picked up being an engineer. But moving into that role, it allowed me to discover things about myself that I really didn't know I loved. Like I didn't know I loved research. Right? I realized that research is something that fascinated me because I love asking questions and doing what I need to do to answer those questions, being resourceful, figuring out how to figure things out. That drove me. And then after that, moving into the industry world and working for companies, right? I'd spent all this time as a consultant helping companies solve their problems. So I figure, okay, I can take this directly to another company and figure out how to help them solve that problem. So The next two roles I had were, with a paper company and a chemical company, to deal with the same thing, solving problems in a very strategic way. Now, the pivot to nonprofit, many people look at that like, wow, that was kind of a pivot, right? You're this engineer turned nonprofit professional. I have always been the kind of person that supports the community, right? I'm very community minded. I do a lot of volunteer work. And right around COVID, I think I just had this moment that taught me that I wanted the second half of my life to be about more than just, making money, for a company to make more money, right? I wanted to see that impact in a way that wasn't tied only to profit. And I saw the role at Women in Product as one that would help me grow my own skills, but I could help people, right? I had spent all this time in my career figuring out how to make products that could be sold. I wanted my product to be people. I wanted to figure out how to improve the lives of people. So that pivot, I think, is probably the best thing I ever could have done. I challenged myself in so many different ways. I really had to build on my relationship building skills, right? I've always been a person that loves to talk to people, loves to build relationships, build trust with people. And that role at Women in Product, I mean, it forced me to do that. I had to build relationships with board members in the community and volunteers. I had to get volunteers to trust me if I wanted them to support, my programming efforts. So that pivot to nonprofit for me was timely, and it was necessary, and it allowed me to take a risk and say, risks are okay. Calculated risks are okay, and they're necessary, because I think if I had not taken that risk of pivoting to nonprofit, I'd be so upset with myself because I never would have known if I could have done it or not. And I did it, and I'm happy about that.
And that's a very meaningful job. And that's also tap into what you just mentioned earlier. Like you like to see the impact of your work.
Yeah.
And your work is helping those women in products, which is
Yeah.
very impactful. Now, the most recent job you just got is back to profit.
Yeah, so back to the profit world. So unfortunately, my role at Women in Product ended. The nonprofit world can be a little shaky from time to time, and we did start experiencing some financial issues that was not going to allow us to sustain ourselves. So the whole organization restructured. A team of 9 went to a team of 3. So my role went away, unfortunately. So now I'm back in the profit world, and I'm actually working with someone that I used to work with. So I reported to a wonderful person when I was at Eastman, and I saw that he was at a new company. So, I reached out and we just chatted one day, and before I knew it, I was in the interview process. And I think it sort of snuck up on me. I didn't realize I was in the interview process. I thought we were just chatting. But he made the role sound so fascinating that I thought, yeah, I think it's time for me to get back into doing this work that I love. I think this time around I'm going to be so much better at it. I hate to say things like that because I never want to sound arrogant. But the experiences that I had from the time that I was at Eastman, I was at Nina, and then I went to my nonprofit role at Women in Product, and now I'm back at a role that's similar to what I did at Eastman. I think that I've learned so much. I've picked up so many skills. I've built so many different relationships. I've learned so many new resources. I think I'm going to be so much better at this role than I was before. So I'm super excited.
Actually, I believe in you because I think probably this is the time to connect your dots. And just by one connection we had before, I was so impressed by your work. Seriously, you were able to, in a very short amount of time, look into the market, make some deep research, and come up with a very good market analysis and recommendation. The whole work that you have done was so wonderful. So I have no doubt this is going to be the job that you're going to shine.
Thank you, Demi. I'm looking forward to it. I've got a few more weeks and I'll hit the ground running. I'm ready.
One or two things I just pick up from our conversation is you've been doing different type of job in different corporate role and also explore that in NGO. That's a risk that you're taking. Not stay with one company forever. When you make some changes, And when you try to take some risks, what are the key things behind that?
Yeah. I think you can never be afraid to reinvent yourself, right? I think COVID taught everybody a lot, right? COVID kind of pulled the rug out of many people's lives in that the thing that you might have depended on as being true turned out in one day to not be true anymore, right? It was true that you could get in your car and drive to a restaurant and sit there and have a meal and then come home. Well, in one day, that wasn't true anymore. So it caused people to really rethink, God, what do I really have the grasp on things that I think I have, right? So what it's not really a big deal for me to make this switch that I've been wanting to switch because what's true today may not be true tomorrow at all. So I think you can't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Um, every experience that you have, take something with you, right? Even if you go through a challenge that you don't feel great about how you came out of that challenge, take something with you from that, right? What's the question that you get in every single interview is, tell me about a time when, right? That is a very standard interview question you have. Tell me about a time when you've had a challenge in. How'd you overcome it and what did you learn from it?
And
I
that's
think
one of my podcast question too.
yes, yes. That is the question I think that everybody should be able to answer about their whole lives. A time when you've had a challenge that you needed to overcome. How did you face it? And then what did you learn from it? I think everything you do, you have to keep that in the back of your mind. And why is that important? Because you have to see yourself coming back from failure. Failure is not a dirty word. Most people think of failure as something that's negative, but it's really positive, right? Because if you never fail, that means you never tried. And if you never try, you're never going to succeed. And this is something that I try to instill into my children as well. Um, don't get comfortable. Comfort zones are very deceptive, right? That's another thing that everybody learned from COVID is that when you get comfortable in your comfort zone, it's time to move. It's time to do something. So that's how I try to live my life, understanding that it's okay to take risks. Um, it's okay to feel uncomfortable at certain times. That just means that there's something else you need to learn. Figure out how you're going to learn it and just keep moving on.
That's very inspiring. Maybe tell me a moment when you have your failure. Any favorite failure, right?
My
Like you
favorite
just mentioned
failure.
about
Oh
like
gosh.
you have a lot of failures. What's your
Yeah.
favorite failure?
Yeah. So, in addition to the work that I do in the career that I've been trained for as an engineer, I'm also a business owner. Um, I have always been an entrepreneur at heart. I've always wanted to own something, and I've always wanted to be in a position to give other people jobs. Right? That's my motivation for being an entrepreneur. I want to own something and set the culture that I always wanted to be part of, and then be able to employ others and give other people a livelihood. So back in 2004. I became a jazzercise instructor because I loved exercising and I just wanted to teach classes, right? And thankfully, I had the skills to be a fitness instructor, right? I got myself in really good shape. I was excited about teaching classes. I had the skills. I became an instructor. When you become an instructor with jazzercise, you are also a franchise owner. So, and you can do whatever you want with that franchise. I decided to open my own center, right? So I opened my center. I hired other instructors. I built a community around my center. I still have friends today that I met through Jazzercise, right? And this is 20 years ago. Um, I ran that business when I was still working full time. And during the course of running that business, I also went through a divorce. Um, After I went through my divorce and I had all the responsibility of taking care of my children who were young at the time, they were 8 and 10. I had the full-time responsibility of taking care of them by myself. I realized I had to let my business go. And it was a sad realization. I loved my business, but there's only 24 hours in a day and I just realized I couldn't do it without jeopardizing, being able to spend the time that I needed with my children. I saw it for me as a failure because I loved my business. I did not want to let it go, but I knew that I needed to do what I had to do for my children. How did I come back from that failure? I never stopped being an entrepreneur. So even though I couldn't run that business full time, I knew that someday I would come back to it. I learned so many skills being a business owner that I never would have learned. So fast forward to today, I have my business back, not jazzercise, but I have not one, but two businesses that I run right now. I figured out that I needed the kind of business that did not allow me or did not force me to have to be in a physical building all the time. So I decided to do online businesses. I started one in 2020 and I started one at the beginning of 2024. And I'm running them both today and they're both successful. And that's how I came back from my failure. I just never let go of the fact that I am an entrepreneur. And I don't necessarily call myself a business owner because, you're a business owner, your own business. An entrepreneur is a mindset. If you're an entrepreneur, that mindset never goes away, right? So I embrace that completely. I never let go of my desire to still be an entrepreneur. And here I am again to do that.
This is so exciting. So while you have to juggle with so many stuff, is there any particular habit or behavior that contribute to your performance at work or in life?
Yeah. Well, I am a spiritual person, right? I believe in God. My faith is very important to me. Um, my the thing that I do every morning is I pray. The thing that I do before I go to bed every night is that I pray, because it keeps me in a place where I never get so big that I think it's all about me, right? So holding on to my faith and making sure that I'm taking care of myself, those are ritualistic for me. Those are the things that will never go away for me.
You have the faith as the fundamental stuff, and then you spend time to take care of yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, this is good. So in addition to taking care of yourself, any particular specific investment, happy investment, or your favorite investment that invests on yourself? Not on your kids, not on your family.
Not on my kids. You know what? I'm gonna
It's a
say
testing
something.
it's a testing
Yeah.
how you take care of yourself.
During COVID, I invested in two improvements to my house. The first investment I made was I built out my workout space. Because if I couldn't get to a gym, I was going to need to have something in my house that I could, work on to make me sweat. So I built out my gym, I have a treadmill, I have strength equipment, I have a rowing machine and a bike. And I put a big, beautiful TV in there and I've got a wall of mirrors. So, that is my happy place, right? It was an investment in time and energy and, financially I had to invest in it. But when I tell you it's my favorite place in my house, it's my favorite space in the house. That way, if I, want to get in a workout, but I don't necessarily want to be around other people, I know I have that, right? The second investment I made, also during COVID, was I built a patio outside my house. So I already had a deck out there, but I tore down the old deck and I expanded it. So it's now like the size, the length of my whole house. And I covered one piece of it and it's right outside my bedroom. And I've got this huge this huge door. It's a sliding door. I can, step out there and have my morning coffee, step out there and have a glass of wine, invite my friends over. We sit outside, we listen to music. That is probably my second favorite place in my house. Again,
Wow.
these are both investments that I made because I thought, well, if I'm going to be at home, I'm going to make my home, somewhere where I love to be. And I think home is underrated. I think people should spend more time at their own homes. While everybody else was hating being at home during COVID, I was loving it because I, made my home somewhere where I really wanted to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is one of the most beautiful investments. One of the most.
Absolutely.
Seriously, because
Absolutely.
by having that investment and then you make a home your favorite place to stay and then give you the peace, give you the rest. And then you can also do the things that you like and you take good care of yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. If I'm in Atlanta, I would love to volunteer to be invited to see a beautiful fitness
Absolutely.
house and your dad.
Yes, there's always wine on the bar.
If you can time travel and say something to yourself 20 or 30 years ago, like when you just graduated from school, what would be your sentences to
What
yourself
would I
20 or
say
30
to
years
myself?
ago?
Yeah. Um, I would say to myself the thing that I learned later, and that is take the risk. I would absolutely tell myself to take more risks, and to place lots of value on relationships. I do that now. I don't think I did that much when I was younger. I don't think I looked to, mentors uh, and those who I could learn a lot from as much as I do now. Uh, so I would definitely tell myself those two things. Take risks and really value your relationships because they are key. They are absolutely key in your growth. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I know everything by myself. I try to surround myself, with those that know more than me, quite honestly. I try to make sure that I have a very great, intelligent, dynamic circle of people that I can go to for advice, I can go to for inspiration. So I think had I done that earlier in life, uh, I may not have faced some of the challenges that I did. So that's definitely something I would do differently.
Wow. Yeah. That's really good. Nice reflection. And like any book that you would like to recommend to the amazing women in business? Any favorite book? Any book that has big impact on your life or on yourself, on your thoughts?
Yes, yes, yes. So I became acquainted with a woman named Nona Jones. And I can't even remember. I think maybe I connected with her on LinkedIn through some, different channels. But Nona Jones wrote a book called The Gift of Rejection. And I think that that book is something that everybody should read because it kind of goes back to what I said about failure being thought of as a dirty word. Because when you think about rejection, you never will tie it into the fact that rejection can be a gift. And I truly believe that, if there's something that you don't get, something that you want that you don't get, that there is a reason you didn't get it. And the more you can think about why you didn't get it, or not necessarily why you didn't get it, but what else are you supposed to be doing, right? And this book made me think more about that. It made me think less about what I lost and more about what I could gain because I didn't have this. I have just recently gone through an interview process for a new job, right? I think I approached this interview process different than I have any other interview process in my career. Because if I walked away and didn't get an offer, I knew that I was not going to feel rejected. Because if that job wasn't for me, that means that something else is for me. There's something else I need to be focusing on. So I think everybody should read that book. I think it's very eye opening in that rejection can be a good thing.
Can be a gift.
Yes,
Yeah.
rejection can
That
be a
what you
gift.
mentioned also resonates with another book, which is Rejection Proof. It's
Mm,
actually written by my best friend. His name is Ja. He's graduated from Duke MBA program. That's where we met.
mm,
And interesting thing was, I think he came across a failure in getting investment for his new startup business. And then he started thinking about rejection. And instead of hiding behind the rejection, he started working on a 100 days of rejection project.
oh,
Like
wow.
for 100 days, that's his project. Every day he went out to ask for a rejection, like purposefully search for a rejection. So he would go to someone's backyard and ask, "Can I play a football in your backyard?" Or he'd look into a stranger and say, "Can I borrow $200 from you?" So by doing this 100 days of crazy rejection projects, you put together a thought about how we get through it. When we get through this rejection, what can we do? And how can we react to it? How can we better articulate ourselves when we are asking for help, or we are looking for support, or we are making some request? That's another very interesting book to read.
That's very interesting. What an approach.
Yeah. And then he became a TED Talk speaker for talking about rejection out of that experience. So this, that's very interesting.
Yeah, because we're always going to go through things in life where we got rejection. We're going to maybe lose a job, or, a relationship, or whatever, right? And how you deal with it is everything. How you deal with rejection will inform how you move forward, because you can't stay in it. You can't stay in the rejection, right? You got to figure out how you're going to move forward. So I highly recommend that book. It's a really good one.
Definitely. I will check it out.
Yeah.
Hey, and I just congrats you for a new job. And then maybe that's another interesting question that you can share with. I'm sure that right now the market is kind of soft. And you just mentioned you've done something that you never did before. Would you mind maybe share a little bit about the journey of how you landed the job, like successfully? Anything different that you did than before?
Yes. So I never before this time used my connections to inform how I was going to actually go about this job search, right? I would go on LinkedIn and see or job posting and fill out an application and just hope for the best, right? The market right now, I think, is just not conducive to that. I think there's too many people applying for jobs. I think recruiters are exhausted. I think companies are taking advantage of the fact that you have 100 people applying for one job. And I think it's just, the way you got jobs in the past is not the way you can get jobs right now. This time around, I reached out to my connections first that I saw were actually hiring for positions, right? And that there's a lesson in that, right? Because if you leave jobs on bad terms, right? If you burn bridges, you are not going to have any connections that you can reach out to for another job, whether it's a referral, whether it's they're hiring or they know someone else that's hiring and they can refer you. If you leave bad relationships, as you go to different jobs, you're not going to have connections. So the lesson in that is make sure you leave jobs, on good terms, or try to, right? So yeah, I use my connections. I sent messages on LinkedIn, to those that I saw either knew those were hiring or, they themselves were hiring. And that ultimately is how I landed this job.
Yes. And I do have a proof point here. Like, you definitely did not burn any bridge. Like, when we talk, if I got that position, I would love to have you to work with me and my team, because you definitely prove your work. You work hard and you deliver, right? And then when you leave the company, you close that with a very nice loop. And that's also the Cyronne that I know for years.
Yes, it's very important. It's really important. And I don't know if I knew how important that was early in my career, but I definitely learned it.
But this is very good conversation, and I really thank you so much for your time and your sharing. This is so inspiring.
Thank you. I'm glad that we got a chance to talk today. I hope that the words that I shared are helpful to someone, and I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Amazing Women in Business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget to share this episode with another amazing woman in business who will benefit from our community and content. Together, we can empower more women to achieve their full potential. Until next time, keep thriving and breaking barriers.